Welcome to this explainer. I'm so glad you're here, because today we are unpacking one of the absolutely most fascinating corporate stories of the year. We're talking about Airbus SE in 2026. This is a massive, pivotal year for the European aerospace giant. I mean, they are the world's second largest playmaker and undeniably Europe's top dog in aeronautics, aerospace, and defense. But what makes 2026 so incredibly compelling is this extreme high-wire act they're pulling off. On one hand, massive unprecedented commercial demand. It's literally off the charts. But on the other hand, they are navigating some seriously acute corporate turbulence. So let's dive right in and see exactly what's happening behind the scene. Here's our flight path for today's explainer. We'll start by looking at this year of transformation, break down their soaring commercial financials, and then pivot to the turbulence in their space division. After that, we'll check out their accelerating global production, some major strategic and legal news, and finally, we'll chart the flight path ahead.
Section 1. A Year of Transformation, the Global Balancing Act.
To really grasp what Airbus is dealing with right now, you've got to picture the sheer massive scale of their operations. Headquarters in Toulouse, France, sure, but their footprint covers 4 entire continents. We're talking major hubs in Germany, Spain, the UK, the US, and China. And this year, they're pulling off a high-stakes balancing act. The core tension of 2026 really boils down to 3 massive interconnected tasks. First, they are just desperately trying to ramp up production to meet this absolute surge in commercial demand. At the exact same time, they've got to restructure a seriously struggling space division. And, as if that wasn't enough, they still have to engineer the next-generation technologies to keep them ahead of the pack. It's a colossal undertaking, to say the least.
Section 2. Soaring Commercial Financials.
Now, if you want to know what's powering Airbus's growth, the numbers are incredibly clear. In the first half of 2026 alone, they brought in a staggering 33.2 billion euros in revenue. That's up 12% from last year. Their adjusted earnings before interest and taxes, or EBIT, jumped 23% to 2.7 billion euros. And looking at the breakdown, commercial aviation is absolutely carrying the load here. It generated 70% of those external revenues, defense and space chipped in 19%, and helicopters made up the last 11%. So without a doubt, commercial aviation is the undisputed financial engine right now. And here's exactly why that commercial sector is booming so much. If we look at the first half of 2025 compared to the first half of 2026, commercial deliveries jumped from 306 aircraft to 351. That's a 15% increase. And you know, in the incredibly complex world of aerospace manufacturing, a 15% jump is huge. It's massive. And it directly drove an astonishing 126.4% surge in their second quarter net profit alone, pushing earnings per share all the way up to 2.84 euros. Long story short, they're getting more planes out the factory doors, and the financial returns are just spectacular.
But here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. 9,222. That is Airbus's commercial aircraft backlog as of June 30th, 2026. Over 9,000 jets. To put that astronomical number into perspective, they secured 821 net orders in just the first half of this year, which more than doubled their orders from the same period last year. A backlog of 9,222 aircraft? That represents nearly a full decade of guaranteed, locked-in work at their current production rates. Honestly, it's a position any manufacturer on Earth would envy.
Section 3. Turbulence in Space.
All right, brace yourself for some corporate whiplash, because you can't understand Airbus in 2026 without looking at this side of the coin. In the second quarter, the company was forced to take a nearly 1 billion euro charge, specifically a 989 million euro write-down against its space business. Yeah, almost €1 billion. This write-down hit way harder than anyone previously forecast, and it was entirely driven by incredibly fierce competition in the satellite market, combined with sharply rising costs.
This situation brilliantly highlights a wild paradox happening inside their defense and space division right now. Because of that massive financial hit, the division's adjusted operating profit slumped by 56%, down to 814 million euros. And to stop the bleeding, Airbus is having to execute a really tough restructuring plan. We're talking up to 2,500 job cuts by mid-2026, out of a global workforce of roughly 35,000. But here is the paradox. Despite the plunging profits and the painful job cuts, the division actually saw huge commercial momentum. Their order intake for defense and space surged 83% in the first half of the year, hitting 9.3 billion euros. The demand is 100% there, but the execution and the cost structures, they've forced a severe internal reset.
Section 4. Accelerating Global Production.
So how are they building their way out of this? Let's start with a heavily anticipated new product, the A350F freighter. Originally launched back in 2021, this lightweight, composite cargo plane is basically Airbus's strategic weapon designed to finally break Boeing's historic, ironclad grip on the air freight market. It has faced a few bumps in the road, partly due to some delays with the cargo doors being built down in Spain, but industry sources say they are targeting a first flight right around the third week of September 2026. After that, flight trials will take about 12 to 15 months, keeping them on a super tight schedule to enter service in the second half of 2027. And look, with 107 of these already sold, compared to just 38 of their older A330F model, the market is clearly hungry for it. Meanwhile, their bread and butter, the A320 family, is getting a massive production boost. In June 2026, they opened their second modernized assembly line right in Toulouse. This was a major milestone because it gave Airbus 10 fully operational final assembly lines worldwide, spreading across Hamburg, Mobile, Tianjin, and Toulouse. With those 10 lines firing, their ultimate goal is to churn out a staggering 70 to 75 aircraft every single month by the end of 2027 and then stabilize at that rate. Oh, and as a quick side note, they're also ramping up their smaller A22 jet right alongside it, targeting 13 of those per month by 2028.
Section 5. Strategic Moves and Legal News.
Let's look at two massive, contrasting milestones from May and June. On one hand, you have a historic financial move. Airbus locked down a record-breaking €3 billion loan from the European Investment Bank. And this isn't just any loan. It's actually the largest corporate loan the EIB has ever authorized. It's specifically earmarked to fund research and development all the way through 2030, aiming to secure Europe's technological sovereignty against the US and China. Now contrast that with an absolute blockbuster commercial win. AirAsia placed a landmark $19 billion firm order for 150 A220-300s. That's the largest single order ever for the A220 program, and it officially pushed total sales for that specific jet past the 1,000 aircraft mark. Huge strategic wins across the board.
However, the spring of 2026 also brought some major legal news. On May 21st, a French appeals court issued a ruling regarding the deeply tragic 2009 crash of Flight AF447, where 228 lives were lost. The Paris Court of Appeal found both Airbus and Air France guilty of involuntary manslaughter, ruling that both companies were solely and entirely responsible for the crash. As a result, they were ordered to pay the maximum possible fine of €225,000 each. Immediately following the ruling, Airbus announced it is appealing the decision to France's highest court, stating that this new ruling contradicts both the prosecutor's own submissions and a previous acquittal they received back in 2023.
Section 6. The Flight Path Ahead.
So, zooming out, what does this all mean for Airbus's macro full-year outlook? Well, despite the severe turbulence in the space division and those legal hurdles, the sheer unstoppable momentum of commercial aviation is keeping Airbus flying right on course. They've officially reaffirmed their full-year targets for 2026. They are still targeting approximately 870 commercial aircraft deliveries by year's end and aiming for an adjusted operating profit of €7.5 billion. And remember that massive backlog of over 9,200 jets we talked about? Because of that, they have crystal clear revenue visibility extending years, literally almost a full decade into the future.
Let's see how leadership is viewing all this. CEO Guillaume Fauré summed it up really well with this quote: "Our focus on steady execution is paying off as demonstrated by strong deliveries in Q2. This fuels our confidence in our future performance." That's really the bottom line here. The leadership is banking on pure, steady execution. If they can just keep those global assembly lines moving and deliver on their promises, they're confident they can navigate all the turbulence 2026 is throwing at them. Which brings us to our final thought. We are looking at a company experiencing truly record-breaking commercial demand and incredible financial growth, yet simultaneously having to make massive, painful structural cuts to its space division while wrestling with supply chain pressures. Airbus is transforming right before our eyes, but the ultimate question I want to leave you with today is this. With a decade-long backlog of guaranteed work in their pocket, but facing ongoing global and internal turbulence, who is really going to dominate the skies of the 2030s? Can Airbus maintain this kind of altitude? It is going to be a completely fascinating space to watch. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.